Is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby...
WeebCon 2024 was a disaster. From the lack of available water, to the quite poorly run cosplay contest, to horrors I can't even begin to describe in one sentence. There were just so many things that went wrong, and I thought it would warrant making a video on it. So, what all happened? So let's get into the background. WeebCon 2024 was a highly anticipated anime convention hosted last Easter weekend in the Gaylord Texan, which is a beautiful venue that is both a 4-star hotel and a convention center. WeebCon this year also had what was quite possibly the largest lineup of voice actors for a convention in Texas this year. The convention promised a fun, safe, family-friendly event for anime fans, gaming fans, and cosplayers alike. This promise, however, would not entirely be met, resulting in many poor experiences and even dangerous conditions at times for guests. In this video, I will attempt to cover as much as I can about what went down at the convention by using the different testimonies from guests, as well as an interview with a staff member, and of course, using my own first-hand experience going to the convention. The rest of the video will be divided into sections based on which content it covers, so feel free to skip between parts if you would like to. Now, without further ado, here's everything that went wrong at WeebCon 2024.
Food! Water! Atmosphere!
Something that all con goers would notice upon being at the convention for even a short while would be the lack of readily or easily available drinking water. This is a particularly dangerous problem as anime conventions are often warm, sweaty, and stuffy, and all of the movement and heat can dehydrate someone very quickly. While the convention did have water jugs and cups out in 2 locations, these weren't actually filled up with water until late Saturday evening. Additionally, water at the venue was being sold for outrageous prices, ranging from $6 to $7 for what was a relatively small bottle of water. And at least in the case of those being sold by the hotel, these were just normal size Aquafina water bottles. So, not the best of deals. Fortunately though, there was a Starbucks at the venue, which means free water, right? Well, unfortunately not, because specifically for the duration of the convention, this Starbucks decided to start charging for the water. So, thanks Starbucks. The overall lack of access to water led to some guests having to sit down or leave so as to avoid fainting due to dehydration, even on the first day of the convention. In a testimony from a disabled guest attending the convention, they said they got really overheated walking in the stuffy artist alley and went looking for water. They got lightheaded, delirious, and it felt like they were suddenly hearing through cotton. After sitting down, their friend had to go leave them and grab someone to find water. Said friend had to practically yell she had a medical emergency until a con staff member, they believe the name was Andy, thankfully helped them out. They found the plastic water bottles for sale at the venue for $6, but they ended up deciding against the cost and instead refilled their water bottle in a bathroom sink. This happened Friday, and nothing really changed until late Saturday when the convention staff eventually filled up that water station. So, why did a convention this big not have water readily and affordably available for their guests? Well, I got the answer to this question by interviewing the assistant to the owner of WeebCon. How did y'all eventually end up getting water? Did you have to pay it out of pocket or?
No, we paid for it. It was not something. The problem is we did pay for it. We never got it.
Oh wow.
It is a charge that is still on our bill, and we are fighting it still.
This wasn't actually entirely the fault of WeebCon, but in fact more the fault of the venue, the Gaylord. So you see, the organizer of WeebCon paid the Gaylord for a plan in which they would receive water for their convention, but the hotel never actually delivered any water. So WeebCon got charged for the water, but they never actually got anything for their money. Now, there might not have been water, but at least the cosplay contest went well, right? Unfortunately, the cosplay contest would be possibly the most noticeable letdown of the convention. The lack of organization made it difficult for the audience to enjoy, and even more taxing on the contestants who had to participate. Right away, the exact start time of the contest on Saturday was confusing, as it had been changed multiple times. At first, they had set the start time of the event for 6 p.m., but then the start time ended up being changed from this to 6:30, and then again people were told it had been changed to 7 p.m., but this actually wasn't true. And eventually, it ended up starting sometime before 7 at around 6:45 or so. That's just the start though. You see, the judges of the contest were not actually all craftsmen, and thus they were not all qualified to be judging a craftsmanship competition. Furthermore, the judges were not actually getting paid to do this. Instead, they were getting paid in exposure. Before this next part, it is important to note this piece of information that I had from the interview with the assistant to the owner of WeebCon. They noted that the announcer that would be present that day was not actually the one they had originally planned on. It's also important to note that the manager was put on last minute as well, and they had to try to salvage the whole operation. The original announcer had to bail out of the production with little heads up, so the event coordinators had to scramble to find someone random who was just willing to take on the role of being the announcer. And they eventually found someone. Understandably so, it was hard to find an experienced announcer willing to volunteer themselves, so they ended up having someone who was inexperienced with announcing present the cosplay contest. So yes, the announcer for the whole cosplay contest was just some guy that got to agree to it. Honestly, I appreciate the guy giving it a shot to keep the show running, but unfortunately, not having an experienced announcer caused many issues with the contest. The announcers seemed to be hastily rushing the contest through, which definitely put unnecessary pressure on the competitors especially. He was also reading out the names a little too verbatim off the script.
Now coming next on the stage, we have N11, Sakura, Black Maria from One Piece the One Arm!
A novice competitor shared their own experience with the contest, saying the following: "I felt incredibly rushed. The announcer would not ever lower his mic, and during intermission periods, his hush talking backstage would be picked up and blasted to the crowd. A notable quote is, 'Oh shit.'" After the understandably so subpar production surrounding the stage walk-ons and introductions, it was now time to close things up and celebrate with the winners and awards and prizes, right? Wrong. So you see at most conventions there are prizes offered to those who are skilled enough to win their category in a cosplay contest, but not at this convention. Competitors were disappointed to find out after their performance that what they were competing for was essentially bragging rights. One competitor claimed that when they asked about it, they were offered letters of recommendation for winning. Letters of recommendation. Yeah, so not really a prize. Not only were there no prizes, but there weren't even enough awards. For starters, there was only one award given out to the skit performance category, despite there being 3 different levels of skits. But not only this, there was also not enough physical paper awards to the winners. And some winners didn't even get a piece of paper for winning their category. I feel especially bad for the people who got called on stage because they won just to not even be handed an award, or in some cases be handed an award from a different category because they didn't actually print one for their category. Cheap Glitz and Glam on Instagram made these awesome award designs in consolation for those who didn't receive a proper award, so shout out to her. She also noted that there was actually a printing area at the venue, which would have been a quick walk of under 5 minutes for one of the organizers to simply just go and print out the missing awards. But when I asked about this in the interview with the assistant, it was said it was more likely an issue of getting a quality award and not something printed on printer paper. But then again, I would argue that something is better than nothing. Just an update after recording this, WeebCon actually did send an email out to the winners offering a cash prize. So in the end, they did at least end up winning something. Now the cosplay contest might not have gone well, but surely the panels went well, right?
I was wondering, what's the recommended amount of dedicated RAM I should have to a server?
Panels at anime conventions typically include a PowerPoint presentation on a game or anime, or even a Q&A session with an actor or content creator. These panelists are also typically given a free badge to enter their convention as encouragement to host a panel. But WeebCon in particular did not offer this, and panelists who had purchased their badges expecting to be reimbursed were sorely disappointed when they found out they would in fact not be. The following was the experience of one such panelist. Panelists were not reimbursed for badges. Me and my group had a waitlisted panel, so we bought badges for the con because we knew we probably weren't going to run the panel. Earlier in the week, we were notified that we were going to be able to do the panel. I had asked if we could be reimbursed and was told no. I personally have run 3 panels before at 2 different cons and was reimbursed at every one. As for usual for an anime convention, there were lots of unique and fun panels scheduled to happen at WeebCon, but as these occurred, the panelists ran into numerous difficulties with running them. After being given the prestigious and fancy panelist wristband, as you can see here, consisting of a pink strip of paper, many panelists were simply put into their respective rooms and basically just had to figure it out. Another panelist shared their experience of this. The soundboard was right next to me, and I had no idea how to use it, but it was clear that just anyone could mess with it. I had connection issues with the Wi-Fi and had a hard time flagging people down for assistance. These panelists were left to figure out the sound system on their own, and when they would ask for help, there often wouldn't be anyone available. Unless I went to a staff member working on something else, but then they would have to stop what they were doing and go to help them. Now, a very important piece of information, which I learned from the interview, was that the chaos in regards to panels was unfortunately due to something out of their control. Because during the convention, the person supposed to be in charge of panels had a family emergency to attend to. This not only left all of the panels without a leader, but also meant that the convention staff would have to take on multiple jobs and help with the panels whenever they could. So the panels didn't go very smoothly. But at the very least, there was the voice actor guests to look forward to. Right?
Bow, 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 bow.
Arguably, the main selling point of WeebCon for lots of people was the huge cast of voice actors, content creators, and even actors who were announced as guests at the convention. Notably, there was even most of the cast of the live-action One Piece, which is pretty cool. Now, it's safe to say that most of the attendees were very excited to see their favorite actors and voice actors and get their signature or photo or whatever they wanted. But unfortunately, many of these people would have to spend, in some cases, upwards of 5 hours in lines just to see their favorite voice actors. Now, long lines are quite common for large conventions due to the sheer amount of people, but long wait times in this case were often not at all due to the amount of people in line. The reason for this was often on a case-by-case basis though, because every voice actor had their own person to manage and move along their lines. But there were even more factors because some people were showing up with dozens of Funko Pops to get autographed and to be resold for a higher price. In one testimony from an attendee named Zach, he had to wait over 5 hours just to get a signature he wanted of a voice actor named Patrick Seitz, who is the voice of Dio in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Here is his testimony. The line for autographs was really insane. I lined up before the dealer's hall opened, almost half an hour earlier, around 9:30 or 9:40. It opens at 10. And the first thing I did was get in line for the voice actor I wanted. Even still, I ended up waiting over 5.5 hours for just one signature, because the con was overrun with scalpers and resellers bringing entire wagons of stuff to get signed, spending thousands of dollars, and taking like 30 minutes on one person, and there being 4 to 5 VIPs getting signatures for every one general admission signature. So these cases of long wait times were likely due to a mix of both the highly uneven distribution of how many VIP to general admission pass holders were let through, but also in part due to the large amount of scalpers present at the convention. Having to wait in a line for over 5 hours not only is very boring due to the stagnancy, but also can even be dangerous because waiting for 5 hours in a hot, sweaty, stuffy convention center can dehydrate someone. And from the testimonies I have, there was no water given out to those waiting in line, so they kind of just had to suffer and risk heat stroke if they didn't come prepared with a water bottle, lest they risk their spot in line. While the meet and greets might not have gone very smoothly, at least the guests can look forward to browsing the art in the artist alley, right? right? Why do I keep saying
Okay.
But first, allow me to destroy your gallery.
The answer's never going to be right if you haven't caught on yet. Yet another problem WeebCon faced this year was one which many conventions unfortunately face. This being the presence of unethical art being sold in the artist alley and dealer's room. Attendees in the WeebCon Discord noticed vendors selling art which seemed to be retraced art stolen from other artists. This resulted in multiple of the same art pieces being sold at the convention. But of course, traced art wasn't the only problem, as many vendors had unbindered pornographic art just out on display for passerbys in the vendors hall and artist alley, just out there for anyone, including children and families to see. Keep in mind that this convention is advertised on their website as family friendly, and when the main part of the convention is riddled with uncensored pornographic material, it's not very family friendly to me. That's not even the worst the art situation had to offer though. Another Discord user in the WeebCon Discord noticed that an artist had pornographic art available which depicted a character from an anime who is canonically underage. They shared evidence of this in the Discord, blurring out most of the image, but obviously I can't show that in this video. This wasn't the only case of this at the convention, and other people and I saw art out and unbindered even, which seemed to depict characters who were canonically children, or in some cases original characters who definitely did not look like adults. This is disgusting and a huge problem at anime conventions, and not necessarily a WeebCon specific problem. I personally think that this has to do with darker parts of anime culture and the gross idea of what they call lollies, or childlike or underage characters who are sometimes depicted inappropriately to various extents in anime. I think this trope in anime is very disgusting, and I hope it dies out soon. Now, it's the unfortunate reality that some people still defend this, so I don't know who needs to hear this, but no, that character is not your lolly waifu. You are just a pedophile, straight up. And it's never okay to sexualize a minor just because it's a drawing. That doesn't sit right with me, and I think it's really messed up that people just accept that the community portrays underage characters in this way, and they don't speak out against it. But it's even more messed up that there are people actually buying this art and financially supporting these artists. So as you can start to tell, the sections of the video are getting a little more serious, so there will be slightly less memes, unfortunately. And I don't know, I'm going to transition to the next one. Here's security.
Any sign of the burglar yet?
No, so.
How's that?
It's his job.
How's that?
He's a burglar.
Security at the convention would be an issue, and not in the sense that it was not policed or monitored by security guards, but I'm talking more in the sense that the security guards themselves were just assholes. The security guards present at the convention unfortunately would end up using their power to just go around and harass and mistreat guests. Many guests reported problems when they interacted with security, and multiple cosplayers and photographers particularly felt mistreated and harassed by them. One hotel and convention guest said they weren't allowed to film or even stand in the atrium while in cosplay. They're told that the atrium was, quote, not for childish things, in reference to cosplay, like that, and was instead for only paying guests, despite them being a paying guest. This type of behavior would continue, and it was not until Sunday that the organizers of WeebCon notified the hotel that their security was kicking lots of their own paying guests who were staying at the hotel out of the atrium, so they eventually relaxed security there, though it was only for the last day of the convention, and most of the damage had arguably already been done. When I asked about it in the interview, I was surprised to find out that the security, which seemed to be harassing cosplayers and photographers in particular, was in fact hired by WeebCon. However, as I came to find out, this hiring wasn't entirely willing by the convention organizers. In the interview with the assistant to the owner, I found out that WeebCon was actually forced to choose between only 2 security companies. Yeah, so did they make you choose from like a few that they approved of, or
there are literally 2 companies they approve of, and we have to choose.
Oh wow. And did y'all have the other one last year, or?
We had the other one last year, and we ended up not going with them this year because we had an issue of they didn't actually do anything. I remember specifically, I caught a couple of them just sleeping on the job last year.
But of course, they would come to find out that the security detail would have a lot of issues, namely the aforementioned harassment and mistreatment of guests. As one guest described their experience with security, We were not safe or protected. Instead, we were harassed or yelled at for stupid reasons.
I heard a couple security members who followed people back to their rooms to make sure they changed when they were in less than, well, as they remember. I heard the phrase slutty or whorish passed around, and that
wow.
it's something that they shouldn't be saying.
I don't know nothing about how I do anything. Whoa!
For the Gaylord Texan, the atrium is arguably the main selling point of staying there or even going there at all. So why then were security guards constantly kicking cosplayers and photographers out of there? Well, for photographers, the venue did have some rules against professional photography in the atrium, unless the photographers were affiliated with running the event held there. In this case, the event would be WeebCon. They also had rules against personal and amateur photography and videography, which in my opinion seems very counterintuitive if you want people to actually book your venue for events. So we know roughly why security was stopping professional photographers, but what made security so much more aggressive compared to the previous years is actually mostly attributed to a few individuals creating TikTok content in the atrium, where they could be seen blatantly disrespecting the property. Namely, a TikTok was created by large content creators Whole Wheat Pete and Julia Maggio, in which they dunk objects and even Pete himself into the fountain in the atrium. In a testimony, one congoer, when asking security, asked why they were kicking people out of the atrium, and the security guard apparently directly mentioned this TikTok by Whole Wheat Pete as a contributing factor as to why they were policing the atrium more. So the following section does include allegations which might cover triggering content for some viewers, so your discretion is advised. The environment of the convention and hotel being so chaotic, combined with the amount of people at the convention, meant there was lots of rooms for incidents to take place, especially in places where security was lower, throughout both the hotel and convention center. To start out, on Saturday evening, there was the alleged roofie situation, where one person claimed they felt sick after taking free samples of pre-workout from a company called UKO Fitness. They posted on Discord that they believed they were roofied, and then they went to the ER where they got treated and tested. This brought attention to staff at the convention, so they made sure they got treated and also started investigating the room where the incident took place and looked into the companies that were handing out the free samples. The results eventually came back negative for all drugs besides alcohol, and the investigation by WeebCon ended up finding nothing. However, there were others who came forth with more allegations of roofies around the same time and place. One guest shared their experience where they took both a free sample of pre-workout and a can of liquid death. The guest assumed the drink to be a vodka seltzer after drinking it, as it felt like a strong drink to them. Shortly after drinking the beverage, they felt, quote, like a mix between drunk and high, and said they looked for the alcohol contents on the can, but they couldn't find any. This is because liquid death isn't actually alcoholic. They then felt very sleepy and had to return to their room, where they proceeded to pass out for 4 hours. After waking up and initially attributing it to just needing a nap, they then saw many other stories online of people getting roofied at the same place they just were, and realized that they didn't just need a nap. And they then said, quote, "Oh shit, yeah, I think I was just roofied." Whether the roofie drug was placed in the pre-workout or the liquid death beverage is still unclear. Now, the following story is quite possibly the most harrowing and depressing incident to occur at WeebCon. This one in particular is very upsetting, so once again I will warn you about the content, as it does discuss sexual assault. I was given permission by the victim to share her story, and I hope by doing so I can spread awareness and hopefully incite change for the future in terms of safety at conventions such as these. The incident took place at a WeebCon after party in a hotel room where cosplayer and convention goer Ava entered hotel room 2211 at the Gaylord Texan. She and many others were not ID'd upon being let into the room to see if they were old enough to drink or to see if they were even adults. And she and her friends claimed to witness people being let into the room who were in fact underage. They also noted that there weren't any wristbands or marks being given out at the door to show who could or couldn't drink. Although no one at the party claimed to see her drink, Ava herself did say she had 2 drinks which were given to her at some point during the party. She believed at least one of them was spiked, as later in the night she would fall nearly completely unconscious. After the roofie had struck at around 3 a.m., she went to the bathroom where she then fell unconscious. A man she described as in his 20s or 30s and either Asian or Hispanic then entered the bathroom and locked the door with himself and her. He then proceeded to sexually assault her. Other people in the hotel room tried to check on her and knock on the door, but the door remained locked. After assaulting her, the man hastily left the hotel room. She would post the evidence of this online to her Instagram story, even including her visible scars from the experience. There was actually a single testimony provided by another congoer providing conflicting information to all of this, saying that there were in fact wristbands and people were getting ID'd. But other testimonies went against these claims, and some of these people even came out to say that this person was providing conflicting testimony in bad faith. Following the incident, Ava reached out to WeebCon to see if they could help, and they then promised to help in any way they could with bringing the man to justice. Eventually, with the help of a friend, Ava was able to identify the man and report him, and now he is no longer allowed at any WeebCon conventions, and hopefully won't be allowed at any conventions at all in the future. So with that, that's just about everything that went wrong at the convention. Now what do we make of all of this? To start, after having talked to many different people who attended the convention and having gone myself, I for one personally hope WeebCon can use this information and these testimonies featured in this video to improve the convention safety and organization in the future. I think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement for WeebCon, but it's also important to keep in mind that some of these issues were failures of the venue to supply convention with adequate water, security, or other means to host a fun and safe convention. There was a clear lack of organization in many regards, but of course some of these came from when people working the convention couldn't show up or bailed last second. I think this doesn't entirely excuse it, as this could have been prevented if there were measures in place to have a backup ready. As for the future of the convention, people have been speculating that the con won't actually be continuing, especially after the release of a podcast looking into this matter. The Cosplay Crunch podcast in particular noticed that the trademark for WeebCon isn't owned right now, and the company sponsoring WeebCon, Wild West Weebs, has filed for bankruptcy. After asking the assistant to the owner, however, it seems that WeebCon will in fact be continuing. It will just be at a different venue this time. As for whether or not I will return, I personally haven't decided that yet, but I do hope to see big changes in the next years of WeebCon, and I do think the change of venue is definitely a step in the right direction. Anyways, thanks for watching, and please go support and follow everyone involved in the making of this video. It would mean a lot to me if y'all could leave a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever you want to do so I can see if y'all like this type of content and want to see more from me in the future. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Averse, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.